So dedicate a lot of hours trying to get better, but it's like you're not always going to have all the answers. But I think as long as you have an open mind and you're willing to evaluate yourself and ask the question, what can I do to improve? How can I be more open-minded to incorporate these things and just create a more positive environment for young people? Then you're going to be good. If you have that mentality, you're going to be able to create a nice environment for your players.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at College Prep in Italy, Alex Sarama. College Prep started in 2021-22 with 15 players from 10 different countries around the world. It's now growing to 21 players from 14 different countries. Coach Sarama is also creative director for Basketball Immersion. He shares team and player development ideas for basketball coaches, teams, federations, and organizations all around the world. His focus is on helping coaches stimulate their thinking by combining their personal and practical experiences with evidence-based coaching ideas. There are so many free materials you can check out at basketballimmersion.com. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast.
Matt, how are you? So sorry for the delay.
Coach, no problem at all, man. How are you?
I'm good. It's pretty crazy here because we're 3 weeks in, but it's a huge like logistical challenge because we got 21 guys here, but from 14 different countries, and it's a bit chaotic right now, just sorting because they all live here.
Yeah.
So it's more like the basketball stuff's easy, but it's more the house situation, like the cleaning, the food.
Tell me again where here is. Where are you?
I'm in the north of Italy, about an hour west of Milan.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's the time difference like right now? It's 10:30 a.m. here.
Right now it's 5:30 our time, p.m. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
where are you based?
Dallas, Texas.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you so much for giving up your time. I'm so excited to get to talk hoops with you, especially after having Chris Oliver on. I figured, man, we got to finish the entire Basketball Immersion family there, right?
Defo. No, it's great. I appreciate you having me on, Matt. I love the questions too. It was super efficient, so made it really easy.
I hope that helps coaches just one, know a little bit about what they're getting into and also have some time. Like, I don't think someone like you needs a lot of time to prep, but maybe it brings up something like, yeah, I actually love talking about that and want to go deeper.
Yeah, because I've never actually spoken about culture or anything like that on a podcast. It's always normally just like specific basketball stuff. So it's cool.
My whole thought behind doing this was I get to go to a lot of coaches' clinics, and I'm typically sitting in the audience where, all right, they have 45 minutes, whatever they talk about, that's what I take notes on, which is great. Yeah. But if I have this opportunity one-on-one, here's the list of things I would really love to learn about from you. You get to choose, and I think it's been working all right.
Oh, definitely.
All right, so you've had an interesting experience getting to coach all over the world. And so even though maybe some concepts or the ways of teaching basketball can be different, I'm interested to see how's the culture different as far as working with players in different places. So how does culture drive performance?
Absolutely. I think it's really interesting too, because every country is so different because of, the historical background and the social context of where you're working. I mean, even, a lot of my like very close American friends, when they talk about like basketball outside the States, they typically say overseas, right? But it's like, but where overseas? Because even if you say European basketball, well, every single country in Europe is completely different basketball-wise. You could go to a country like Spain, and what you're seeing is completely different to what you'd see if you went into a practice in Serbia or Lithuania or France. So I think first, like when it comes to culture and looking at how culture drives performance, I think you have to have an understanding of actually like who you're coaching and where you're coaching. And really, I think we can't apply coaching with like copy and paste methods where wherever we're going to coach, we just have like a checklist. We're going to do the same things. I'm a big fan of being organized and having processes, But the key thing is, I think we always have to reflect in whatever situation we're in and really make an understanding to make an effort to understand the landscape of basketball. Like, is basketball a sport where it's popular and kids see it a lot on TV, like in Lithuania or Spain, or is it somewhere like where it's really like in the UK, you don't see it much, and so I think that's what drives culture. And then I think for me, the biggest thing with culture, and it's great that we can speak about it because normally, like we spoke about before the podcast, I just talk about basketball. But I think it's culture to me, it all starts with values. And we have 4 kind of core values that we speak about here at college prep in Italy. And that applies to absolutely everything, not just stuff we're doing on the court, but everything we are doing off the court in terms of traveling to games, how the guys live in the house. So and what I can do is I can just explain these 4 core values. And what we actually did, Matt, is we had the coaches as a coaching staff, we decided on 3 of them. And we did these in a series of Zoom calls because obviously we're all in different countries in the summer. So basically what I did is I asked the coaches to come up with a list of values that were important to them. And then we looked for basically shared similarities and things that we were all speaking about. And then we asked we asked our captain to pick the last value. So it was actually really good because we had 3 originally. And then the 4th one that our captain chose was probably the most we felt like relevant for the group and where we're actually at right now. So let me just
Coach, before you do that, because I don't, there's some really good golden nuggets that you dropped right at the beginning of one, whether you're overseas, like you said, or even in Texas or at a high school and you're going into a job interview, most coaches will have a folder with their culture that they've established before. But you got to be careful because even city to city within the same state or country, their surroundings, their experiences can be different. And so you can go into a place with your folder all organized and say, hey, guys, this is the culture that's worked for me before at the schools I was in, but it might not be the best for where you are. That was a great nugget.
So true, Matt. Like, you could be in a school in a very like rural area, and then you're in an inner city and the demographic of kids is completely different. And you can't just expect to coach them the same way. And that's why, that's why I always use the quote, I'm not coaching basketball, I'm coaching people who play basketball. And there's a big difference there. So, and I think too, a lot of the stuff we see, to me, Matt, culture is not reading a John Gordon book and talking about all these things. If I'm all honest, I find that stuff really cheesy. And I'm not attacking you. I know he's got some great work. But for me, it all starts with how you approach your relationships with the players. And that's why, for me, I'm so important. Transformational coaching, that's kind of the pillar of everything we're doing. So it's like the coach is not up here and the players are down here.
Yeah.
We're looking at this from an equal relationship. So that's why, as soon as my first interaction with the players, and from what they call me, I'm like, I don't want you to call me Coach Sarama because I'm not your physical ed teacher from like 8th grade or whatever. I'm your coach. You can call me coach or you can call me Alex, whatever you're comfortable with. And 2, from the first practice, Matt, we're giving them autonomy. So obviously when we talk about some basketball stuff later on, obviously like in my practices, they have a lot of autonomy to make their own decisions and what they want to do for warm up, how they want to practice. And it's like, I think if you create that environment in your practice, then the culture just comes, it's a byproduct of that.
That's
so
good.
I mean, just to give you an example on these values,
okay,
Matt.
I got one more question before you get to your 4, because the second thing that you said, part of getting to do this I love is talking with so many coaches. It shines a light on things that I'm not doing well, that I could do better, but sometimes it also validates things that I'm doing. So the way that you had and this is an activity I think all coaches should think about with the culture that they've already chosen. One, ask your assistant coaches for input. Ask them and have those lists, because literally this summer, Coach, I've been the guy for the last 9 years at my school that dictates, here's our 5 to 6 words. You're going to live by this. This is who we are. And because I've got good kids that are followers, they do it. But asking my coaches, we did that. We went through, guys, what do we usually actually say? What are the words that we're using? What are the things that we truly do believe? And then let's build our culture through that. And then, coach, we have 5 words, kind of that fist approach. We chose 4 based on what we've said over the last few years. And then the 5th one, our seniors chose to get that buy-in that you really want from your culture instead of us just. So thank you for that reminder too. Can't wait for the 4.
Absolutely. So we went with growth, and then we have like a little summary. So that's what we mean by that is valuing mistakes, effort, and becoming a better version of oneself. And this applies to not just the players, but critically us as a staff as well. Creativity. So, and that means we seek knowledge, solutions, intellectual, and fight the status quo. And obviously that is very relevant to how we approach practices and offense and defense. Joy. So we approach the game and our work with a sense of purpose and conviction. I think that's huge because it's even we're an elite performance environment. We've got 9 Division 1 prospects right now on the roster.
Wow.
And we've got a bunch of different national team players from all over Europe, but still at the same time, there has to be an element of joy, for staff and players. And the last one is fight. So we compete with a high level of effort and resilience, especially under adversity. And I think, those are our 4 values. So it's everything we do, we can link everything back to one of those 4 values. And obviously they're really relevant.
One thing I love, because I know a little bit about you and the way that you think and teach the game. And what I love about those 4 things, sometimes I feel like culture, it's separated from style of play or the way that we practice, where they'll have a T-shirt, we'll have a poster, we'll have our words, whatever, in the locker room. But on the practice floor, that doesn't happen. But growth, wanting to make mistakes, joy. Third one was
fight,
and creativity. Yeah. Those 4 things. Not only do we want them in the locker room and with each other, thinking in those terms, but that's how we want to practice. That's how we want to play. So there's a lot of brilliance there, Coach.
Oh, it's such a good point. It's all, and that's the thing. It's like, that's exactly what you just said, Matt, is exactly what I mean by culture. I don't exactly have like a 1 sentence perfect definition, but for me, it's just simply, it's everything we do all together. That's what culture is every day. And you can't separate, like you said, you can't separate style of play and what we're doing from culture because everything is one. And that's a great point.
Yeah. I would imagine the cultures out there or coaches that are trying to teach something like togetherness, wanting guys to really celebrate each other, but the style of play is completely catered to only one player. There's friction there.
Right.
Like, okay, Coach, I get it. I'm supposed to be clapping right now, but man, do I ever get to handle it myself? Do I ever get to see an advantage and attack it and then transfer? So I just completely on board with what you're saying.
Love that.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products. So you have that dynamic culture. What's one of your ways to build that up? And is it not just daily, but maybe an activity that you do?
Absolutely. So actually, it's going to be next week. So first, what I actually do is I don't like to come in immediately and say, all right, this is our culture. I actually want the boys to kind of get a feeling for how we are as a staff and the environment that we're creating for them. So actually the first 3 weeks, I don't say anything, right? I let it play out. I learn, because we got a lot of new players. I get to know the kids. I see what they're really like. After 3 weeks, the honeymoon period is over. I start to see tantrums and things like that in practice, and I see you really get to know the players, right?
Yeah.
So now what we've done is we've just created something called Team Pulse. So I'll get this up on my laptop so I can talk through it. So it's a Google Doc. So everything with our staff is on Google, and we basically assign with our coaching staff. We basically group all the players, and we give coaches like 3 or 4 players each. and their job of that coach, including head coach, is to basically like check in on those players during the year, and they're assigned to them. Then what we have, so we call it a pulse owner, right? So I'm like the pulse owner of 4 players. My assistant gets 4, and we all share it. And then we just make a note every week. And so, for instance, right now we've got for one player on our team pulse struggling with his on-court role and effective play leading to frustration. KK, which is our assistant, Kareem, is going to start conversation weekly check-in. Then we just got on another player, small heart, needs a lot of touches. Then another one, we need to figure out what he wants from himself. Seems a bit careless, not so interested in learning. Let's have a conversation with him. So it's like we got these little notes on every player. And then we have action steps for that with each player and kind of who's owning that. And then it's all color coded. And then what we do is next week we actually have, this is the first time we're doing it, off-court workshop with all the players. And we haven't actually introduced the values to them yet. So I haven't been speaking about them the first 3 weeks. So in this workshop, I basically get them doing a bunch of reflective tasks. And I ask them questions like, what's the worst culture you've been a part of and why? And it's really interesting just to hear how humble they are and what they say. And they do this in pairs. We call it debriefs. So they talk with a partner, and then I cold call on someone to use their leadership voice to explain this to the whole group, right? So again, this is all things like this, leadership voice, it's all linked into our culture of autonomy and, all of this. So then we quickly identify these things, and then we look at things like what type of environment it is that we want to be a part of. And this links into a lot of the stuff that Owen Eastwood has done. He's one of my favorite guys on culture because it's academic, his stuff. It's tangible and it's more evidence-based, right? It's
not just touchy-feely.
Not touchy-feely stuff. And Owen's worked with some of the best sports teams in the world, like the All Blacks rugby, South Africa cricket, English football team. So, and he actually talks about tangible ideas and how you can actually foster a sense of belonging in a group. And so it's a bunch of stuff where we share these ideas together. We talk about what type of environment we're striving to create. So we do all this reflective stuff. The guys feel like they're really part of the co-design, like they're designing this. It's not coming from top to bottom. It's more bottom up, right? So we do all these activities. I make it interactive. So I play like a 3-minute video of the All Blacks because I feel like that's the best case study of any team, any level getting it done, from a culture perspective.
Yeah.
And then we get onto the values. So then I introduce the values to the boys, and I get them to talk about what it means to them and kind of why we chose these values, how they think they can use these values in their day-to-day lives, not just basketball. And that's kind of how we go about it. So it's very kind of interactive. And then kind of from that moment on, we can really link everything back to the values in everything we do.
The one thing I thought about early on with what you said there, again, the idea of highlighting maybe a deficiency that I have. I'm the guy that day one culture, day one, first word, let's get going. But I love the idea of taking time because there's other processes that we need to put in place too. How often are coaches guilty of trying to get everything done at once?
So true.
Instead of slowing down, because I'm just thinking to myself, like in the future, what I'm going to do is let's take the first week on just how we stand, how we practice. What does double whistle mean? What does single whistle mean? How we look. But the beauty with your 3 weeks is I would imagine the players, without even knowing it, because of how you train them, because of how you interact with them, when they finally hear the culture pieces, they go, yeah, like we've been doing this, right? Like it lines up, and I think that's awesome.
And I gotta say too on this, like I loved what you said at the start about asking assistant coaches, like something I read in Culture Cult. That's also a good book because it's evidence based by Dan Coyle. He talks about like anytime you're in a new environment, just ask the people who are already there, like what's one great thing we should keep doing, and if you could change anything, what would that be? If you could change one thing, what would that be? So I think lots of things like that, and also just asking the players for feedback. Like I typically we have like a group WhatsApp chat. I'll typically be like, all right, send me any feedback that you have, anything we can do better as a program, send me a private message, we'll get to it. Same with coaches. So I think it's like it's creating that environment of psychological safety where they know they can not just make mistakes in basketball, so anyone can say something, and they know that we're going to respect it and take a look at it. And I think the thing too, Matt, with culture is it's not easy, and it's not like just all rosy. Like, for instance, we've got two players on our team right now who are some of our biggest prospects, like could be high Division 1 players, but really struggling in practices with their attitude, their mentality, how they respond to mistakes, how they respond to feedback. And it's like, you're not going to know every answer. Like, I've been tested quite a lot in the first few weeks, and I felt like I've really responded great sometimes. And other times, on a day where maybe I'm tired and I've got less energy, something else has gone on in my personal life, and I haven't dealt with the situation like I wanted to. And I think it's like that's going to happen because we're humans, right? And I think it's like these things where you're tested. Those are really good signs because it's how you can make the program better. So, for instance, tomorrow I'm meeting all my staff, and we're going to like talk about these players and how we can actually respond and deal with them better. But I think it's not always going to be smooth sailing. There will be times when you're tested. And I think for coaches, we just have to look at that as a normality, especially, basketball is a complex system. We got people from so many different backgrounds. They're kids. We don't know what's going on in their personal lives.
That's right.
So we always have to have that in the back of our minds.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know for myself, I breathed out a little bit. I would imagine a lot of coaches are, because when you just listening to you and the processes that you have, how organized you sound, it sounds as if you've got it all figured out. And a coach could listen is going like, well, I mean, I'm not him. Like I don't have those players. To hear that you struggle with fighting for your culture every single day from yourself, but also from the players that you have skill, I think that's reassuring. I love the idea of Ted Lasso is a show that's huge over here.
Great show.
Okay, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, great show.
But there's so much coaching gold in that. And immediately when you said you asked for feedback, I thought of the comment box that the manager decorates and everything. But how many coaches are terrified of asking those types of questions like you asked, because when they give feedback, it's got to be dealt with. Like, what if it highlights something that is already an insecurity of yours that you're worried about? Mike Neighbors, the head women's coach at Arkansas, he told me he asked them about what their pet peeves are with coaches. What things don't you like? What things it's just along the same lines, really, but good. I think that takes a lot of security in us as coaches to ask those questions.
I agree. And that's where it all comes down to. If you're a transactional coach, and you talk about culture, but then you're punishing the guys on every mistake, making them sprint all the time, you're like, you don't let them have their say, you tell them how to do things every time. For me, you can't, it's a waste of time even using the word culture, because you're not going to be able to create any type of environment that's really conducive for young people. And it's like, I think the key thing, Matt, is like, I've spent a lot of time studying this stuff, and I'm lucky and I'm fortunate enough to be a professional coach where this is my job. So I dedicate a lot of hours trying to get better, but it's like, you're not always going to have all the answers. But I think as long as you have an open mind and you're willing to evaluate yourself and ask the question, what can I do to improve? How can I be more open-minded to incorporate these things and just create a more positive environment for young people? Then you're going to be good. If you have that mentality, you're going to be able to create a nice environment for your players.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it goes back to your why. Like, if your why is helping them to grow, you'll find a way. It's not always going to be perfect. If your why is accumulating wins, this idea of legacy, that I don't know at what point I figured out, like, my legacy really doesn't matter as far as how many wins or championships. Because I think of my favorite coaches that I've had, and a few years after they retired, it didn't matter anymore, but the relationships will remain. And I think that's what you figured out so well.
Always. And that's it, man. Like, people, the players we're dealing with, they're not going to remember. I love for them. And hopefully they remember our style of play, our dominoes, conceptual offense and views, but they're not really going to remember that stuff and the wins and all that compared to how they remember how I made them feel as a person, right? Yeah. The other stuff, like, really, who cares? Are they going to remember when we won by 2 points on the 21st of September against Torino? No, they're going to remember how I made them feel for their 1, 2, or 3 years that they were with me, the kind of the personal skills that they developed they're gonna take wherever they are in life. And I think that's what we've got to remember at the end of the day as coaches.
Tell me a little bit more about the academy, or even what am
Yeah.
I, if I'm calling it right? What?
No, you absolutely
Yeah.
are. So I'd say it's an academy. It's really the first prep academy in Europe, right?
Wow.
But I use the word prep loosely because I don't like the connotations of that word from kind of how we've seen it from what we see from traditional prep programs in the US. But really, the goal is for players come to us who want to go down the NCAA route. So all European players, we have probably like 9 Division 1 prospects right now on the roster, 21 players. They're all aged between 16 and 19 from 14 different countries. So obviously it's a big operation. We practice 10 months of the year and we play about 30 to 35 games a year with each team. But obviously a lot of practices, which were player development first
I was going
program.
to say the ratio of
Yeah,
practice
it's
to games
totally
there is
different.
insane. Yeah.
We have five we have 5 team practices a week and 3 or 4 player development a week and 3 strength athletic development sessions.
Wow.
And in the summer they're resting or they're with a national team, but they won't do they can't play for another team or anything like that, right? And then I've got an amazing coaching staff. So it's a team including myself of 6 coaches, all full time. So we got a Belgian assistant Jonas, Spanish assistant Danny, we got an Italian assistant Giacomo, and then 2 great American coaches who are here. They can't get a visa, so they do 3 months here, 3 months remote, and then another 3 months. And really, our mission statement, it's to positively impact the basketball world using evidence-based transformational coaching ideas. And that's why I'm so glad that we've been able to dive into the culture stuff today, because everyone hears about me talk about constraint-led approach, conceptual offense, defense, but the culture and the transformational coaching, that's a huge half of the equation. And then all the
Right.
evidence-based stuff is, the other chunk. And that's why I'm coming at this from both angles, because I feel like,
yeah. Sorry. I'm just so excited. You're right on the money, because the type of basketball you're talking about cannot work if your culture is restrictive, or if it's keeping the individual down.
yeah,
It really,
exactly.
both sides of it have to
Exactly.
flourish. Yep.
Oh, it's key.
Man.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there's a lot of things I can already tell that makes your program different, but anything else that you feel like is just makes it special, makes it unique?
So I'd say really focused on trying to apply evidence-based ideas. So I spend a lot of my time kind of looking at the research that's been done into sports science and like skill acquisition. So we've tried to be the first basketball program in the world at any level to fully adopt ecological dynamics. So it's essentially theory for how we view human movement, right? And it's based on a lot of evidence which exists. It's called dynamic systems theory and ecological psychology. So when we blend those 2 things together, we get ecological dynamics. And essentially what it is that human movement is self-organizing in the light of constraints. So for instance, what we mean by that is whether we're in the weight room or we're doing a session on court, player development, or team practice, everything we do, it's not going to be showing techniques and getting players to do one movement over and over again. In fact, what we try and do is just create an environment where movements kind of self-organize in the light of constraints. So I don't want to spend too long going into ecological dynamics, Matt, because it's like a whole podcast in itself, but obviously I've got a lot out there on it. But I think it's great because, we have a lot of high schools, like NBA teams, NCAA teams who I consult for now. And I'm basically sharing these ideas of how you can incorporate the ideas of ecological dynamics into player development, team development, and weight room sessions. I think just the key kind of simple thing for coaches is basically we have defense kind of in everything we do, unless we're doing shooting. We do some differential learning, which is 1-on-0, but it's every shot's different. So it's repetition without repetition. And it's basically just trying to create an environment where players would encounter the same decisions in practice as to what they would encounter in a real game.
Can you give an example of a one-on-one, two-on-two game where what constraints you use to create the environment that you're talking about?
Absolutely. So ecological dynamics is basically if coaches Google that, they come up with a whole treasure mine of stuff. But then the key thing is it's like there's then it kind of flows into the constraint-led approach. And this constraint-led approach is actually a model for coaches, basketball coaches, and coaches of any sport to follow to implement ecological ideas. So essentially, like you said, we use constraints in small-sided games. So coaches are already using constraints without knowing it because, every time you create a one-on-one or a two-on-two, those are different task constraints there with the number of players in the game.
Right.
The space that you're playing in, maybe you say it's full court, maybe you say it's half court, maybe it's half the half court. Maybe it's a one-on-one, but you make a really small space and you say it's only in the paint, right? Or one-on-one only outside the three. You can only shoot a three, right? Other constraints could be a one-on-one where maybe the point system is different. So they get extra points if they score with their left hand versus their right hand. Or a rim finish close to the rim is worth more than a mid-range, right? It could be like a two-on-two where they're constrained to only using one type of offense, like a pick and roll. Now, there's still a lot of option for self-organization to pick and roll. You could reject loads of different ways. They might slip. They might ghost screen and sprint through. Loads of things could happen, but the opportunities for action are limited to a pick and roll possession, or it's just a complete free-for-all. They can do whatever they like. So the example is, by using the constraint-led approach, we can purposely nudge players towards some solution, not solutions, but some opportunities, and we can kind of script these encounters more than if we kind of just rolled the balls out and said, go play 2-on-2. So it's different. It's not a games approach because it's a lot more purposeful and specific with kind of the interactions that we're trying to manipulate within the practice. Is that a practice?
Yes, sir.
Enough? Okay,
and it makes complete sense. And I'm not the only coach, I think, that listening to you that thinks that's what we're doing. And it also, that's what I want my offense, the environment I want my offense to be in. I want those advantages to be created with how we flow in a conceptual offense. My question is, and I think if a coach is listening or does listen, that joysticks, runs tons of sets, there's really not even an opportunity for creativity. No. There's going to be some friction to that approach to coaching. What advice do you have for those of us out there that may still be there?
Absolutely. So it's a great example. A coach who's become a good friend of mine called Paul Wackerly in Ohio. He hosted me. We did because he bought the BDT offense, conceptual offense, last year, right? And that's my course on how to do this stuff with small-sided games and all that. It was his first year doing the BDT last year, and then we did the camp in the summer. He used to have 18 set plays and a continuity offense, right? And now he's changed completely. And I said, Paul, why did you change? And he's actually did a testimony on YouTube, and he said, one, it's way better, right? He's like, there's no doubt about it. It's just way better. As simple as that. Two, the players enjoy it far more. And I've never had more. He's at one of the best high schools in Ohio, girls basketball. He's had numerous D1 players. He's had 1,000 high school wins, right? And yet still he's willing to change. And normally it's the other way around.
That's impressive.
So this is why I'm telling people to go check this guy out and watch his girls team play this year. And third, he said, the players have improved more than any group I've had in the past. And it's never been a more enjoyable season. Now, his talent level this last year just wasn't as good as what he had in the past. It's just been a quieter year. But now, because they're younger, he's never been more excited to see this group come through. And I think the thing is, it's just like, I completely understand why coaches do things like read and react offense and set plays, because we feel like we're controlling things.
There you go.
It's very difficult to give control to the players. But the thing is, it's they're the ones playing the game, and you can never fully control a situation. It's just impossible, right? Because of the unpredictability of basketball. And if you're always trying to control it, players are going to miss obvious opportunities for advantage because they're so focused running this pattern in their head. And if they go off script from this pattern, they're probably going to be called out by the coach. So instead, it's like we still have a structure. I'm not saying it's just a free for all
Right.
one-on-one.
I think you have to be more organized personally.
Oh,
More
you do,
organized.
for sure. You have to be able to explain these ideas to your players, and I think, but once they get it, the results are spectacular. Like we had like 3 different state championships last year on the BDT offense, like Idaho, Washington, and the last one. I can't remember where the last one was. It was like a Midwest, and it's like, it's because it's so unpredictable. And these coaches are telling me, they play other teams, and their girls or boys can neutralize them after 5 possessions because they know what they're running, versus, they're using the BDT offense and it's completely unpredictable. Players get better during the season, and you can't scout and prepare for it.
And I want to encourage coaches too that if they were like myself, a former player that played in a very controlled environment in high school and in college. My college coach ran flex. I'm convinced he ran flex because some of my teammates weren't smart enough to do anything else. But for me, it turned my brain off, and I was able to see just a few things. But golly, you're playing against Kansas and they're making you reverse the ball at half court. Try running flex from half court and see what you get. It's just frustrating. But, I'm coming from that style. But I do think coaches, even if you didn't play that way, or the guys that you've worked for before, they didn't do that, you can learn it, and you will see the joy. That part of your culture, I just see joy in players making plays, not running plays. There's nothing like it.
No, and on this point, Matt, like we've got a bunch of free resources on Basketball Immersion, loads of blogs about conceptual offense. On our YouTube channel, we just released my first practice of the season, all access, completely free. So coaches can watch that, and you'll start to understand conceptual offense in that. So, and we've also got on the same YouTube channel, I've got a 10-minute edit of my team running conceptual offense, so you can see what it looks like. If coaches see those YouTube links, there's more. You can YouTube my Basketball Manitoba clinic, building a conceptual offense in 1 hour. I introduce coaches to triggers, small-sided games. And then, of course, if coaches like that, then they can buy the BDT offense. But there's a lot out there for coaches to see and understand how to do this stuff.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. So you have players coming from so many countries that have been taught different things. How do you teach shooting in your program?
Great question. So I moved away from doing form shooting, and I used to do all that stuff. And then it didn't really align with the ecological dynamics kind of concepts. So we do shooting 1-on-0, but we do something called differential learning. So instead, what we do is, instead of doing really close, like, we would actually prefer players to shoot threes, because it's better for promoting self-organization and learning different coordination. So with bad shooters, because it happens, we have 4 bad shooters right now. Instead of me giving them a technique to replicate, what we do is we create activities where they're learning how to be more adaptable and basically shoot using different coordinations and body parts that they never would have done before. So the idea is we're basically expanding their solution space, that's the scientific word for it, to get them naturally finding a way to shoot which is more optimal for their body. Because it's the thing, if I give them all the same technique, it makes no sense. One of them is 6'9", huge wingspan. One of them is 6'3", small wingspan. So this is why, because every player is different, I want them to self-organize naturally. So what we do is we speak about brads. This is number 1, back, rim, and down. So every shot has to be a back, rim, and down, dead center back of the rim. What that does, well, it's a constraint, because they have to shoot with arc to get a brad. So instead of saying bend your knees, in order to shoot the brad, they naturally self-organize their body to get more arc. So that's the number 1 thing. And we're obsessed with brad. So when we shoot, it only counts if it's a swish or a brad. And then we do the differential learning. So it's things like shooting with different stances. So it looks weird, but one leg, shooting on one leg, shooting with leg really wide, really
From
narrow.
three?
Stagger, yes. And we get them changing every time they change their range. So shoot a mid-range, a three, an NBA three. Now they're gonna miss a lot, but again, it's not to score, but it's to get them learning different coordinations, right? So the idea is that over time, they're naturally going to be pushed towards using slightly different techniques that they wouldn't be doing before.
That's more efficient.
Exactly. Exactly. And it means that we don't necessarily know what that best technique is going to be for them. We don't have like an idealized model of how to shoot it, but they're figuring that out with all the different differential learning activities we have.
Can you just kind of take me through? So you got maybe a player starts at the free throw line, then he shoots a three,
Yeah.
then an NBA three.
Always different. Always different location.
What movements would you have them be doing at those?
Great question. So I like to have these always different too. So you can start catch and shoot, then we could go off the dribble, but we say every time it's going to be something different. So even if we say off the catch, maybe they've got to do some different footwork before, like
step,
maybe
drop,
do a hop, maybe they do a 1-2, maybe they move sideways, maybe they move backwards. And I get them to be creative. So instead of like me saying these are your options, I just say like always find a different way to move. And then same thing off the dribble. You've always got to do a different dribble before your shot or a different pull up every time. So we want as much variability early on as opposed to adding complexity later, which is the traditional approach, which is what is done commonly in basketball. We want to add complexity and variability from the start because it helps them become better shooters and become more adaptable.
So this is, to me, this is the reason you see, sometimes the NBA players, you get these little, shots of what they're doing before games, and you see Kevin Durant twirling around in a circle to regain his balance to go back up. Is that something you would recommend even
Great
for
question.
something like that, but for younger players? Or
I would class that as differential learning. The key things is the problem is when they do this typically pregame in the NBA, they're always in the same spot. So it's blocked constant. So you could definitely add something like that. But I'd say, all right, Kevin, every shot you got to change location and range. Or you've got to do a different balance every time. So maybe one time you spin left to right, maybe the other time you do it in a different angle, a different speed, or you do like a half turn and half again. So I basically what I want is repetition without repetition. So every movement should be slightly different, not identical.
So, Coach, I've been against just volume shooting for a long time now myself. When I ever get to talk with coaches about shooting, because at our school we try to shoot the three quite a bit. It's a weapon that we use for spacing and pace, and plus it's worth more. But and it's fun and all those things. But it's something, something to hang our hat on too. Like this is who we are. This is what we do. But so I'm against just the guys 5 spots, shoot 10, jog in when you're done.
Yeah.
One thing I try to get them to do is like it's a PGC kind of thought because I used to direct for them for years. So it's like, why do shooters miss? They practice too slow and they practice without pressure. So we use a lot of shooting games for that, where there's a time component, there's inner rows that they need to make. Maybe there's movement. How could
I see a value to that.
How could you work? Should I be moving away from that to just more of different off balance turns?
Great question.
How do I blend those two? Maybe
mix of both.
Okay.
So we do a mixture of both. So we have some shooting challenges we do, and then we also have the differential learning where it's a mix. So the shooting challenges, all I'd say, Matt, is to always do them with brads. So it only counts if it's a brad or a swish.
Even high school kids that are because the success rate is going to be really small.
It was the same with my guys.
Okay.
Like I didn't count a make as a miss. They just shot it again. But it's like same with my guys. But then after like 2 months, oh my God, the improvement is insane. Like my team last year when I started this in the first year, we were like an average high school team. Now I'd say we're like probably like equivalent to like a nationally ranked like prep or whatever. But still, it's like the same. A lot of the core I had last year, they're not completely new team. They've just got better. And I think it's because we've been obsessed with brads. And the more they do it, the more you'll see it. And it's like, so keep those things, just try and add situations where instead of it being blocked where they're always in the same location, like spot up, maybe they just take one step between every shot and the distance changes very slightly. We basically just want to avoid the brain going into autopilot.
Yeah. And there's a couple games that I have. Green, yellow, red is one. It's 9 spots on the floor, so they are moving there, but it's 10 shots at a spot
Sure.
in a 4-minute game. So the speed of it, if they don't make it, their score doesn't count. Like, I like that pressure involved, but there is this idea of turn your brain off, rep, because the rebounders and stuff are counting. So I see that.
What I'd say to that, Matt, is like we do. So we do like spot shooting, right? So you got 5 spots, 5 shots from each position on the court, corners, wings, top. But every shot from the corner is in a slightly different location. It's because you got from the deep corner to the break. So you got variation there, and every shot has to be different. So the pass, we don't have the passer under the rebounder, even though it might take 2 seconds longer. The passer has to go always to a different position on the court before passing. So, all right, maybe 1 rep in every 4 they're under the basket, but other times they dribble to the 3 and make it as an extra pass or a drive and kick or out of bounds or a skip. Because shooting, most shooting drills are done with the pass always coming from under the rim. How many times does that happen in the game?
Only off of offensive rebounds, but yeah.
Exactly. So you can add variability with the passes and just slightly change location every time.
Okay, so Ray Allen shooting, we just did it about an hour ago. It's 2 minutes, rebounder shooter. We use levels there's 5 ladders, 6 levels on a ladder. A little easier than me saying 15 feet, 16 feet. They go to a level on that ladder. So Ray Allen is, if you make from level 1, you move to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you make 6 in a row, you get a point. You come back. Every time you miss, you come back. Would you say that I need to start the only way that if you make it, but with rim, you stay there.
Exactly. And you shoot it again.
You miss it, you move, and you shoot again. You miss it, you go. That's the consequence. But then you swish it or brad it, you get to move back. Is that a good adjustment to that game?
Love it. Absolutely. And maybe you take, it's unrealistic for players to get all 6 with the brad and swish, maybe you cut it down to 3 or 4 levels to complete. But I think that's a great, and you'll see results in that immediately. And if you just, Matt, get them making sure they change where they shoot from as they do it very slightly, you're onto a winner there. I still see enormous value to using activities like that. And then also, Matt, combining that with different one-on-ones where they shoot threes, but with different types of contest. And I think the key thing is not having just a one-on-one where they shoot a heavily contested fadeaway. That's not what we want in the offense, right? So we can give them a passing option with a +1, but just still, even if they're a bad shooter, by having a defender get used to closing them out and shooting in time, it completely changes the biomechanics of the shot, the release speed and the release height. So that's why, even if they're a bad shooter, I still get them doing one-on-ones because it's gonna change their self-organization and maybe lead to them using a more optimal technique just through having that defender, regardless of the misses.
How much of the balance work, whether it's 1 foot, because we've done 1 foot shooting before, and even I don't know if coaches need to try this stuff, because when I do 1 foot shooting, I don't know what it is. I feel like my shot line is straighter. I have better focus. I'm able just to place that ball more where I want it to go. I don't know if I understand the science behind it or the reason, but I feel that. So what's how much of that should we be doing daily?
Okay. So I would say we probably do differential learning with the different things like one leg, different arcs, speeds, balances. With the non-shooters, we do that more. So maybe they would do differential learning at the start of practice while the reasonable shooters do some shooting challenges or one-on-ones with contests. So I'd try and split them like that. But then everyone can do differential learning. I mean, last year we probably we've got a lot of time, but to give you a percentage, maybe 10% of the time would be differential learning.
Yeah, shooting. That helps me because there's a large portion of practice that is given to shooting every day.
Oh, it's key. And what we do too, we shoot in between all the small-sided games and scrimmages. So that's our time for shooting. So
Mm.
say we finish a small-sided game, 2 minutes, I give them a shooting challenges and they go. Or scrimmage, all right, before the next one, we shoot.
And I
And
would
that's
imagine too, I like that. I would imagine too, your small sided games, your scrimmages, you help players because what we want them to do is have a next mentality, learn from what just happened. But let's just say it's a negative experience. Don't let it
yeah,
carry over. So,
oh,
one, they
exactly.
have to use that shooting drill to let the past go, focus on what they're doing. But then it also allows them to get more out of what's coming up in the future.
Oh,
That's a good nugget.
undoubtedly so.
I think shooting is the one area where confidence really is key, but confidence is huge. I think it comes out a lot, whether they have it or they don't have it.
Oh, it
But
does.
in basketball or with your players, how do you build confidence in them?
I think like shot selection is key, number one. Like they have to know what type of shots we're going for and have the confidence that if they're open and in rhythm, everyone on our team has the green light to shoot it. Even our players who aren't great shooters right now, if we have a nice domino sequence, driving kick extra, and it's corner three, open, in rhythm, everyone's got to have the green light to shoot that thing. So I think really we're so clear on our shot spectrum. Gold medal, foul, rim, layup or dunk, right? Silver medal is a off the catch three, spot up three off the catch. Bronze medal is not the dribble three and then a mid range. And we will only take the mid range in the last 7 seconds of the clock because we have the
Mm,
clock.
yeah,
And
good
it's
for you, man. I'm
we
glad you have that.
we are super super on it with shot
Yeah.
spectrum. And then, I mean, the players get confident because the way we practice is so different to everyone we play against.
Yeah.
They know, they feel themselves improving. They know that the level of preparation we do as a staff is unrivaled, and they get confident from that. We shoot a lot, so naturally they see themselves improving. And
What
I will only say to a player, we could have got a better shot. I'll never say don't shoot it. I'll just say we could have got a better shot, and we call it good to great. It's a classic saying. We want to go good to great and get great shots.
I asked them to rate their because we have a rating system where every number means something. So I love the either with your medals that way of approaching it because coach, we need to take the emotion out of shot selection. It's the most personal thing, in my opinion, to
Oh,
players. Don't tell me that that's
so
not my shot.
personal, especially at the pros.
You want to get a defensive player right off the bat, tell them they can't do that, they can't shoot that, or other players can, but not them. So asking them, hey, rate that. Well, coach, I think it was a 6. Six is a contested jump shot for us,
Okay.
and contested in the point where ball in their hands, hand
Yeah.
already there, ball out of their
Yeah.
hands, hand comes late from a prepared shooter or training like you train. That's not a
Yeah.
contested shot.
For
So,
sure.
but once I ask them that and they get it, like, I agree. Let's be a little bit more patient. And it's just an
Definitely.
easier way to have that conversation rather than bad shot, you suck, don't do it again.
Exactly.
Two, with confidence. And because I really am, you're challenging me in that idea of Brad's only, swishes only.
Good.
I get it. It makes sense. The range of players that I have, I think a lot of high school coaches have is, guys that at my school, they were choosing between maybe being in theater or playing basketball. That was their,
Sure.
and they chose basketball, which is great. But no, but we have just a wide range. And so there
Sure.
is an idea of celebrating the success that they
So,
have,
so
wanting them to
you
have
could do
joy. Go ahead.
you just give double points for a Brad then, Matt. So you can
Ah,
count. Could be a great solution. So
yes.
count the makes, but say if it's a Brad, you make a huge deal out of it. It's double, and you got to ring the bell. And if you score Brad, you got to yell Brad.
I see. I love the double points because my better players have something to really strive for.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
players that are at a different level still get to see some like it
Yeah.
rimmed in with 18 touches, but baby, that thing went through.
So when
That's a
there
point.
you go. That's the
But
constraint of
then
the
when
pro
they
action.
Brad, coach, when they Brad, well, man, it just feeds.
Yeah.
I think that's the change for
There
me.
you go. There you go.
Just
That's
that
it.
one nugget right there, mate. And it's already been an amazing talk, but that
Good.
really because I mean, culture of shooting to me is it's I mean, coach, it's 50%. It's 50% of what we
Huge,
do. And
huge,
and
huge.
that'll help a ton. I got a question for you before we go to the speed round. which is a way for us to get to know you in a different way. Um, what are some of the main differences that you've seen from maybe the high school development program that's over here, and then what you're
Yeah.
experiencing over there?
Honestly, it's like I think the one difference between Europe and the US is just training ratio to games. If in the US you had the same training ratio that we have in Europe to games, the players would be way better. Honestly, I don't feel like the coaching is there's traditional coaching everywhere. That's why like with the stuff I'm sharing on skill acquisition using constraint led approach conceptual offense, it's like there could be a coach in the most rural part of Idaho doing this stuff and doing an amazing job. And they're doing, it's like I find it very difficult to kind of generalize and say that, oh, European coaching is better because I've
Sure.
seen a lot of awful traditional coaching in Europe. And I think to me, the one difference is the fact that the kids get way more practices and they see typically their pro, like in their club system, they see pros in their clubs training and it inspires them and they see
Yeah.
them doing things. And so I think that is the difference. I think for me, it's like the next difference, Matt, and this is where basketball's going to go in the next 10, 15 years, wherever people are in the world, the programs who start doing evidence-based ideas and implement the things we spoke about today, they will be the ones miles ahead of everyone doing great work. So that's where it's like, if it doesn't matter where a coach is, whatever high school they're coaching, how big, or whether it's grade 1 or grade 4, whatever. But it's like if you're willing to spend a little bit of time researching this stuff and you do it, you can have amazing results in your kind of environment.
Yeah, that's really good. And I agree with you. I think if we look back right now, look back 10, 15 years and see how much it's changed.
Yeah.
Hopefully now we are going along with that change, but it's going to happen again. It's going to go another direction. And so as coaches, whether it's social media, whether it's whatever, you don't want to get behind.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stubborn. I'm not saying that there aren't some old practices that are great. My high school coach was an amazing motivator, and the way that he did that is he got at our hearts. Like there are things like that that aren't going to change, but guys
Of
like
course.
you and basketball immersion and
Yeah.
the resources that are out there, man, it'd be really good to check them out.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, I played in Iceland for 1 year, and I really wish
Oh,
that
amazing.
I really wish that I would have
Amazing.
been. My life was a mess at that point, and I was living poorly, and I got asked to leave, even though I was playing pretty well. So that tells you how bad my life was, but just bad decisions. But I
Life
saw that
experience.
model that you're talking about with those teens were sitting in the stands at our practices because they had practice right after us,
Okay.
and looking up to us, and that model is really impressive. Let me ask you this:
Yeah.
um, where I'm in Texas, where American football, it's a religion, basically. There's something, I don't know if you ever heard of the term Friday Night Lights.
I've
Like
seen it on Netflix. Yeah.
it's real,
Yeah.
man. Like the whole town turns out for it. And there's some, I mean, I'm a Cowboys fan now, and so like I get that, but there's this big idea of individualization in sports being
It
harmful
looks
and
like
bad
a
for kids.
yeah.
And what are your thoughts on that? And then I'll kind of come back around where maybe what I feel.
Yeah, man. It's just like, but just going back to that football culture, it's like that's what I feel like the biggest clubs in Europe. I don't feel like, of course there are clubs doing great work, but it's like I almost feel like it's more like the fact that it's such a big deal, the whole experience and the prestige to play for this
Yeah.
program and the resources that they have available to them compared to like smaller clubs. And for me, it's like it's more a case of I don't think there's anything systematic or exceptional with the coaching that they're doing. It's that kind of they've sustained a certain level
Yeah.
and it's always going to stay at that level. So they're naturally at an advantage, and that's why they're producing players. So it's like if you want to be a program that catches up to this, like you're a smaller high school, whatever, you have to, which is 98% of us.
Right.
This is why you have to do it differently. Because if you try and copy them and do the same things, you're not going to get the same results. So it's like this is where it comes into all the evidence-based stuff. I didn't really answer it, but that's just my thought process.
No,
Just
that's
when
good. But
like,
so the whole idea right now, there's a big debate that I played multiple sports all the way through 8th grade. A little bit of baseball, but I realized I couldn't hit. Played American football, got hit in the head one time and realized that's not for me. Swam, but hated wearing the Speedo. Didn't want to do that anymore. Always played basketball though. But then my freshman year, coach, I focused. I chose one thing and I decided to be great at that one thing.
yeah,
I never felt that, but I'll tell you, there are coaches here that will say that you're hurting players, that it's worse for their development to have them focus on just one thing. But then I remember being
yeah.
over in Iceland and I didn't ever feel that. I felt like it's just kids wanted to
I
do that and focus on that. They did it. And
like I like to go back to the original question. I feel like if you coach one sport the right way and you do really good like warm up activities where you're getting them doing lots of like we play like soccer sometimes for warm up or touch football or we do loads of crazy stuff. But it's like if you do that and you get your players exposed to movements that they wouldn't just get from basketball, for me it's no problem. I think it's almost better than doing. I think multi-sports is great if you can from like a young age up until like 12. I think though, if you want to just do basketball from 13, no problem. But if it's a coach in a traditional environment doing drills, it's a problem because you're only exposed to the same movements over and over again. If it's an environment where you're doing small-sided games and you spend like we do spike ball for half an hour every week, if you're in an environment like that, then you're going to get the same benefit that you would, but probably better because if you have a traditional coach in those multi sports, you're just doing drills the whole time, and maybe you play like 10% of the time. Whereas
yeah,
obviously, so you see, it's like it's a
yeah.
balance.
No, that's good. That's a good nugget there. I think if I could travel back in time or be in high school again, it would be so much fun to be in your practice. And I think be a
Definitely,
part of your program. It isn't as coaches. That's what we want players because it's the idea of get to or have to. Do you
exactly.
have to come to basketball every day and be with me in the gym, or do you get to? And your type of training and learning, I think, gets that idea of get to.
Definitely.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. All right, Coach, this speed round. Quick questions. First thing that pops in your head. You ready?
Let's do it.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Strawberry.
That's the first time I've heard that one. That's it.
Yeah.
How many hours of sleep do you need and do you get?
Or at least 8. I love getting 10, and I try my best to do that.
Nice. That's a lot of sleep, Coach. You're that must be a priority that you're getting to bed. You're protecting that
last
rest.
2 weeks I've been away from that, but typically from like October to June, once I'm done with preseason and all the craziness, I'm pretty good.
Coach, this may be a weird question, but what are some of your routines to kind of wind down,
Yeah,
get your brain
absolutely.
to settle? What are you doing?
Trying not to do work late night is
Yeah,
key. So
yeah.
otherwise my brain keeps buzzing, especially if I'm doing basketball stuff. So that's a big no-no. Playing jazz music, I play saxophone or just listen to something. Have a
Nice.
glass of red wine. Obviously, I live in Italy, so that's key. Hang out with my girlfriend, watch something on Netflix. Just try and do stuff where I'm not
Just
thinking
turn it
basketball.
off. Let
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, yeah. Best basketball movie of all time.
Oh, Coach Carter.
Nice. I wonder how many coaches out there would have loved at one point in their career to have that gym scene where he pins the dude up on the
Oh
wall.
yeah.
Just, not that we'd ever do it, but man, you maybe wanted to one time. No, that is good. That is good. Okay. I usually ask this. This is for coaches in Texas or college
Okay.
coaches, but for high school, shot clock or no shot clock.
Oh my God. 100 times shot clock.
I knew
No
your answer.
question. No debate. You can't even argue against it. For me as a European, if US programs had the 24-second clock, you would have the proportion of American to international players in the NBA would be way more skewed towards USA.
Wow.
Simple as that.
Can you explain why?
More touches, more possessions, more opportunities for players to get skilled. You could get 80 possessions in a game each team versus 30 each. Who's going to improve more and get better?
You're right. And then, okay, zoom out. There are coaches because in Texas we don't have it. That are against it. What arguments do you think I kind of get it?
Spending $2,000 on a clock. Like, all right, if you're saying you want to control and beat teams who are better than you by slowing it down, why are you coaching youth basketball? Really, why? Right? Like, your job is to develop players and make them better. Like in Europe, your job as a youth coach, if you're a professional coach and you're trying to win games, a good club there fire you because your job is to produce senior players. So in American context, that would be your job is to produce players at the NCAA level. How are you going to do that if you're trying to win games versus getting them more reps? If they lose against a better team, well, that's a learning experience. Done. For me, I just don't understand any of the. I honestly don't understand any of the arguments against it.
What's this for a high school level age kid? What's the shot clock over there?
They would play with 24 seconds from 13 years old. So that's the reason why our players are skilled. It's not because of magic coaching, but you have to get your offense done in 24. Say it's like, I haven't got my phone, but say it's like 80%. You get 40 possessions more a game, right?
Yep.
In a normal season, that's like 800 possessions more.
Yeah.
Really.
Texting or talking?
Texting. I hate WhatsApp audio notes. It's a big thing in Europe, but people leaving audio notes.
Oh, some people are trying to do that over here. Coach, I can't even figure it out on my phone.
Okay. I really dislike that. Inefficient. Yeah.
Favorite holiday?
Oh, great question. I love Easter in Italy. It's an amazing period. Easter.
Really?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Summer holidays great, but Easter's really cool here. Nice weather, good food. Yeah.
Okay. In basketball, who is the GOAT?
Oh man, go with Jordan for sure. Yeah.
No hesitation there. No hesitation.
No way.
Man, this is so interesting for you because of where you live. Your favorite place to travel?
Oh, I think I'm lucky because I live in one of the best countries in the world. Literally, like Italy is incredible. It's the reason why I've stayed here instead of taking really good like pro jobs and stuff, because it's like living here is insane. It's impossible to explain. A lot of coaches come and visit us from all over the world. Like typically we have like 50 coaches during a normal season that will come and visit us, and they all say the same thing. They come here and they want to live here. So I'm really lucky. Other than that, I do enjoy coming to the US. I typically come for my off season. So I spend like 2 months in the US every off season. And that's cool just because culturally, obviously, it's so different.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I've been to 40 different countries of basketball now, including like places like Kazakhstan and some weird places. So I've seen a lot, and I just love always seeing different cultures and things like that.
That's cool. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Great question. Cappuccino in the morning and then 1 espresso after lunch. Sometimes if I go out for dinner, I have an espresso after dinner. But awesome. It's Italian coffee, so it's good.
All right, last question here. Godfather, Star Wars, or neither?
Godfather for sure. Yeah.
No Star. Coach, you and I have been aligned so much throughout this talk. No Star Wars at all in your path.
I appreciate Star Wars. Cool. I still do.
It's what I grew up on.
It's not like the shot clock. Yeah.
Oh, Coach, this was incredible, man. I thoroughly enjoyed just getting to learn from you, and thank you so much for your time and sharing.
Pleasure. Great questions, Matt. And coaches, anyone listening, feel free to. I'm very accessible on social media. It's just Alex J Sarama on Twitter, SARAMA, and Instagram Alex Sarama. BasketballImmersion.com. conceptualoffense.com. It's all there.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.